Hello, hello. Welcome to Music Corner Symphonizing Project episode 15. I'm David Kolma, and today we're continuing with our look at Brahms 2, Tchaikovsky 4, and then our very detailed bar by bar analysis of Beethoven 1. So in the second hour, I'll be looking at where it suddenly slips into G minor for a little bit in the second theme during the exposition of the first movement. And in the first hour here, I'm continuing looking at sections of the first movement of Tchaikovsky 1 and Brahms 1. I'm not expecting to spend more than 4 or 5 episodes in a row here on these two symphonies, so I'm kind of just picking from areas that interest me. I just so happened this first time to have chosen three things in the first movement of each piece in a row. So I'm just going. There are not many other people paying attention to this right now, so I'm just learning how to do this. So I'm having fun at the very least. So thank you for those of you who will watch this now or in the future. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. I try to pay attention to the live comments when they come in, and the any afterward comments. But I know there aren't many people paying attention to this at the moment, and that's perfectly okay. So past 2 days I've looked at chunks we're going to start with Tchaikovsky first here today. So I was listening to the first movement, trying to find something that would be interesting to me, because I had already chosen where in the Brahms I was going to look at today. And I got to this moment here where the flutes and the clarinets play this very slow tune against motives and patterns from the very first tune. This is basically in the coda. They obviously were in the coda when this thing happens, but I'm pretty sure this is also coda material from about the previous system here. So, because we've confirmed F major and slipped back into F minor in this loud stuff that happens right before it. And then, which leads back into the big opening fate motive gesture that I looked at 2 days ago. So we're going to listen from letter U here, which is at the top of the page. And we're going to focus on the stuff that happens starting at V. And I've written out the music until the first couple of bars here of the molto più mosso. So let's find out what Tchaikovsky does in this section. So right here on it's raised mostly in any recording. You're going to hear the trumpets and the timpani roll, and the woodwinds here. Yeah, well, they're just playing the same 2 pitches. So then horns, there's some bassoons, and it breaks from there. So let's listen. And so on. Usually recordings are a lot faster at that point, so let me zoom this part up here. It's usually even faster than that, because people go crazy. I was listening to a Michael Tilson Thomas recording, and he takes the very beginning very slow. He likes to change the tempo a lot. Anyway. Tilson Thomas with San Francisco. I'm sure he's done that multiple times, so I'm not sure which one. I wasn't paying that close of attention. I'm not really a recording person, interestingly. I mean, I have recordings I like, and I think some are better than others, but I don't get interested in whose recording is better and comparing and contrasting. It's not what I'm here for. I like sitting with the score personally, which is why I'm doing that here. It's also free, or at least the cost of having an internet connection or a physical copy of the score and a Spotify account. So anyway, so the opening sort of fate motive, as it were, the thing with the 16th note triplets, that recurs a bunch of times during this movement and throughout the symphony. So it first shows up again when we get into the long development thing, and it shows up a bunch of times. And this is another major statement. So he seems to like putting it at big roadblocks in the let's say big important crossroads in the symphony. So so interestingly, it's all A's, A flats. And remember that this tune emphasizes F. The times it comes back before this, it's not on F. It happens in a bunch of different places. So in the key of F, that is. So the starting note would be different than F. But there's a long, very loud timpani roll, which sounds like garbage in my MIDI here, on F, the tonic. So F. So, and then all we get is the version of it that happened when the second statement of it that happens in the very opening of the symphony. So the brass did a version where they did this gesture, where they do the second gesture differently. It's the second attempt, the second time when the woodwinds join the horns, that it happens just. And so that's the thing that happens here near the end of the movement in the coda. So we're getting that. So just there's not a lot of extra here. And then what happens is, as the F is holding on, so let me write some of what I'm saying down here. Putting the word fate in quotes. Motive returns at, I'm gonna say about the beginning of the coda. Opening fate motive returns at about the beginning of the coda in the original key, F minor, with starting note, I'll say pitch of A flat. This time we get the second statement, which has the repeated F, G, A flat in measures 3 and 4, and also a timpani roll on the tonic F. So Tchaikovsky modulates in lots of different keys here. There are tunes that during the recapitulation they don't really come back in F, because in later 19th century symphonies you're not expecting all the tunes to come back in the main key, although he will get there, the main key, by the end. So the second tune comes back, it gets into F major really, and so we confirm F, which is really the main point, is that we just need to get back to F of some kind. And then after that we get the horns and also the bassoons here, plus the bassoons. They're doubling the first and second horns, while the third and fourth horns have their own third line underneath. And this with the F, with the F timpani roll continues, as you can see here. I'll go over here. Then this gets modified into D flat major. So the top line becomes an A flat, which is doing something similar. Well, is it really doing that? Let me say this way. The middle voice, actually the top voice does, so hold on a second. Let's say the top voice is the same as before. So we're getting A flat, A flats followed by F, G, A flat, and they go back down to F at the end of the bar. But it's harmonized with D flat major triads. So what we're getting here is the D flat, F, A flat, and they hold that for the first two bars. So this is what that sounds like. And then underneath the F, G, A flat, F, they're just arpeggiating in a similar contour notes of a D flat major triad. So this is a D flat major triad. And then this is just, so the G is a passing tone while the other two voices have D flat and F. So we get, and then the upper voice moves up, and that's just a D flat major triad, and then we leap back down to the first one. So that is just D flat major for 4 bars, the chord, which in our key of F would be our flat 6, the diatonic 6 chord. I don't know how I would handle it. I mean, it still has that F, the F pedal going on in the timpani. And so that's the 4th bar of it there. And then we expand out, and the woodwinds and flutes play the first, just play the 3rd bar gesture again. So bum bum ba dee bum, just that bit of it, up the octave, in 2 octaves actually. So it's 2 octaves higher. So the 1 octave above it is the oboes, actually the clarinets. The oboes are just playing A flat, D flat. They're playing a harmonization line for both parts. And the other 2 voices in the flutes, the upper 2 voices are in the flutes. So we've taken the horn line, moved it all up an octave in the clarinets and the 2nd oboe, and then all 3 of those voices are up an octave in the 1st oboe and the 2 flutes. And that's just only 2 beats long, so since he's truncated it, there isn't the, well, he's made this the long note. Bum bum ba dee bum becomes dum bum ba da bum. So the last 2 notes are shorter. Right, we go from a dotted quarter tight. Well, actually, it's written as a dotted quarter over here, going to an 8th and 3/4, and that becomes a quarter going to an 8th. So it's getting shorter. So the 8th is the same length, but that's different. Is it really? No, because this is in 3. This is in 9/8. So one of the difficulties here is that in terms of knowing the rhythmic relations by looking at the score, is that Tchaikovsky is writing the brass and the big main motive in 3/4 on top of music that's been in 9/8. And so I've written it all in 9/8 here. It's the same rhythm. I've just rewritten it so I didn't have to deal with all the time signature changes. And so it's this and this. So both notes are technically shorter. So it lasts over 2 beats instead of 3. And then there's a 2-beat gesture that's similar. It's got a similar contour. The main line does an ascent of a, so going from F, G, A flat, F. Instead of doing that, we go G, A flat, B flat, B flat, B double flats, 2 B double flats, and then A flat. So notice it's the same kind of texture. We go up twice, down once. Instead of this. So we do a step, repeat the note, go down a third to the first note. Now we're doing go up a step. So we have a note, we go up a half step, we go up another half step, repeat that note, then we go down a half step to the middle note this time. So that's a completely different idea. I should also note that, hey, by the way, I figured out how to deal with the reason it gets highlighted. Is like if I click down here next to the number, so it thinks I'm like clicking on a word or something and highlighting it. So I've solved the problem of too many blue highlighted things when I'm clicking around. There's probably a better option later. But anyway, as the woodwinds do that, the basses play and cellos play holding Fs with a couple of repeated pitches. So we get that D flat major we get the D flat major chord with F below it in the woodwinds. And then the next gesture happens on top of an E flat. So the other notes that are holding here are, there's a C in the horns. That's a written G sounding a fifth lower. It's a C. So there's F and E flat. Let me write it this way. Let me do it this way. A way to explain. I'm just explaining the transition. I haven't even gotten to the thing I wanted to talk about. Okay. Anyway, I just thought this was interesting. So above this, there's that, and there's also a G flat holding, where this elaboration around A flat occurs. So the G is a lower neighbor to the A flat, and the B double flat is an upper neighbor to the A flat. So the A flat is, this is another example of the A flat chord being the thing holding everything together. So the A flat is the fifth of a D flat chord. Now the A flat as the root of a dominant seventh chord. So this is a 5 of E flat. I'm sorry, 5 of D flat. So this is a 5 of that previous chord. And then 2 beats later, that's repeated now, but this time instead of having E flat, it has E double flat, but all the other notes are the same. And this is our good friend A. This is an example of a dominant seventh chord with a lowered fifth scale degree. So what we have is like if I was going to write this out in so we'd have the root of the chord, which I'm going to call 1. It's not very helpful. Actually, let's do it. So the way a chord would actually work is that the 5 would be the fifth scale degree, and the seventh scale degree, and the second scale degree, and the fourth scale degree. And that matches our pitches in our A flat major A flat dominant seventh chord is A flat, C, E flat, and G flat. So it sounds something like this. It's got E flat on the bottom. I'm sorry. Let's play the right notes. So we get on F, D flat, and then this chord. And then this is what happens next. And leads here. So it's another kind, this is a we've made the dominant seventh chord crazier by taking this set of chords and adding in a flat second scale degree, also sometimes called Ra, in the movable do solfege. And so what we've made is basically a species of augmented sixth chord, because the augmented sixth between, this diminished third here between C and E double flat, and they both resolve to D flat. So this is a species of augmented sixth, but which kind is it going to matter which kind it is? Yeah, it's like a French sixth chord in a different inversion. So French diminished third chord. Boo. With well, the A flat's on the bottom, so it's a diminished sixth. It's a French six. As you can see here, the E flat's on the bottom, so it's a French sixth chord that goes to the tonic. So it's happening in a different, it goes to the note D flat. But if we're thinking of it in the way you would be normally taught German augmented sixth chords, this is the one in the key of G flat. But Tchaikovsky believed that these were chords that went to the tonic, not to the dominant. So he's using that here. That's a perfect example right here. So, and then this beautiful music, that is the whole reason I was wanting to talk about this at all, which is actually pretty simple otherwise, is just music in D flat major. There's a big long pedal in both the second bassoon and the basses. in the same note. Let's just take a listen to the beginning of this again. And so this is very straightforward in terms of, so we have a D flat pedal, which is our tonic, a D flat chord. And the flutes and clarinets just play D flat and F, and then they go up, they step up to E flat and G flat, which are here operating as passing tones to F and A flat, two notes in our D flat major triad. So the first bar is just D flat. And then in the second bar, we have on top of our tonic pedal, the D flat, we have, let's see, let me play it up here. So all of those notes there, A flat, G flat, E flat, give us a dominant. That's an A flat 7 sonority above our D flat pedal. So that's 5/7. And then we move to, from there, we move to G flat. So that becomes that's like the same pattern as the first measure, but happening on 4, G flat major, with a passing of the A and the C in between, which actually makes a 1 chord this time, rather than just being passing tones. So we get a 4 chord, and then we go back to our D flat 1 in the next bar. So it's literally just 1, 4, no, 1, 5, 4, 1. That's all it is. All on top of the pedal. Now, while that's going on, Tchaikovsky is using his bum-ba-dum-bum-ba-dum-bum gesture that was built into the main first theme, and that's just, he's doing scalar passages in the strings. So starting on D flat, that's the root. So that's the 1 step down to A flat, which is the 5th, and then we arpeggiate in the 1 chord. And then during the 5 chord, we have the E flat and the A flat, which are both in the chord. The D flat's a passing tone here. The C are chord tones, and the B flat's passing tone to A flat. And then we move to the G flat major section. And this is all doing, so there's G flat, B flat, and then there's the A flat, C, E flat during the A flat and C flat up in the woodwinds. And then back to G flat and D flat, and so on. And this is basically how this functions, is that they're just playing little scalar passages and emphasizing notes in the chord that the woodwinds are playing above them. So then we switch the texture. After that 4 bars, there's the sort of secondary passage where we move a little bit away, still having our D pedal. So now we have C flat and F are, so that gives us a sound of a 5 of 4, and that the E flats here are passing tones to D flat and C flat. Guess what? We're going to go to 4, and those are all notes in a 4 chord. And then that does the same. So it's a 5 of 4 to 4, then 4 again with a passing gesture, and 1 arpeggio. So this is the same kind of pattern twice. We descend by step instead of ascending like the first 4 bars. Then we do a descent of third after holding a long note. Then we do that a second time, going from 5 of 4 to 4, then staying on 4 to 1. And then the oboes and the horns replace the flutes and clarinets. This is in octaves again. So, and now the bass is going to start moving for us. So they also start on D flat and do the same opening gesture. And now when the second measure, instead of having a pedal, we have a note in our A flat chord. But this is a different harmony the second time. So when the oboes and horns take over, we do get our D flat 1 chord. But now with the C on the bottom, we actually get an F minor triad in place of our A7, which would be a 3. 3, 6, 4. Let's see where it's going. And then we get E and G right here with the B, and so that gives us we get the D flat in the strings. So that's an E7 chord, E fully diminished 7 over B. And in between that, there's an A flat with C, F, and A. So we go back to our F minor, but now it's over A flat. This is a very standard way of getting from one version of F to another. And then again, we have our, is this a C? Well, we could, it's either this, that's the real question. Well, with that B flat down on the bottom, it's really, you could also think of this moment here of the E diminished. The D flat could be, you think of the C as the chord tone. And so then you'd have a C7, because the next time this happens, it's probably more of a C7 like moment than it is an E diminished. And in the end, those are basically the same, they have the same role in passages like this. So that's like a 5 of F. So notice we're emphasizing F after that first chord. So we're sort of actually an F minor here after the first measure. And notice that bar is all F minor. So we've moved back to our tonic. Finally, but it all happens the second time. And so on and so on. So that all, the woodwind horn, the oboe horn line happens twice, exactly the same. So it's how so this little reposeful moment of D flat major, the flat 6 key, there are some music theorists who write about using they kind of composers in the mid to late Romantic period in these big stormy pieces of music that they write that modulate a lot and have lots of dramatic purpose, that they use the key of the lowered submediant, that is flat 6. The major key there is a kind of place of repose, or kind of like a magical, nature-y place that is moved away from the major stormy section of the movement. So you can think of it as like, you know, the eye of the storm in like a hurricane or something, so there's lots of stuff spinning around, but in the middle it's all this clear brightness. So it's only momentary, right? So that's the same thing happens here. So I find it really, I really like this section. I think the little melodic line that's kind of slower than normal in the winds is really lovely against the pedal and then without it. And then the way he's continuing to use the dotted note rhythm that's been around the whole symphony as this is going on, it's really creative. So lovely music. Now I'm going to move on to the Brahms here. All right, let's find out what the Brahms has to sell us today, or what random stuff I can make up. Okay. So the Brahms 2, as I mentioned in a previous episode about the Brahms Symphony, the Brahms Second Symphony, that the way that the opening, which has that opening dominant pedal in the very beginning, after the opening when that note comes in, the A, that after the D, C sharp, D, A, and that the main tune comes on top of that A, and that's a rather odd little characteristic of the opening of this piece. And interestingly, Brahms takes advantage of it here. So what I've got here is what's technically would be called the retransition. That is the idea is that a transition takes you away from the original key to something else, and the retransition takes you back. That's all it means. So we're trying to get back to the opening again for the recapitulation where everything happens a second time, this time usually in the tonic, hopefully. And that's part of the definition of it, which is right here. The return happens right here at letter I. So I've typed out the music from about here, so we can listen to the passage directly in front of the return to see how Brahms sets up a D major chord with A on the bottom. And so how he does something that's rather interesting. It's not the normal way. You have to set it up differently than you would if you were setting up a D major triad in root position. And that's usually just a big, long, dominant pedal. You know, an A major triad or an A dominant seventh chord. So the idea here, you just do a bit. You can set it. One option that was available is to do a big pedal on the dominant in the key you're going to be in at the beginning of the recapitulation, which is your main key. Brahms is going to do something different here. So take a listen to how a portion of Brahms's retransition here. That, you know, the end of it, I guess. I don't know where this starts, but notice there is a dominant pedal right before this happens, where there's an A repeated a bunch of times in the basses and the timpani here. So I've added a little bit of that, and then there's this stuff that happens in between. Here we go. And so on. So important thing here is that right here at I, the oboes play the main tune. And then the second part of the tune happens in the violas and second violins. And so that's the first 8 bars that's on D, and then it moves to E minor for a little bit like it did at the very beginning. But so that's happening here. So it's the woodwinds, and then I've written that down over here for the strings. So, and it's very clearly like it was the first time with an A pedal on the bottom. So when it comes back, there's an A pedal on the bottom. And then after the F sharp E, F sharp D, there's a D pedal. And so that all happens again. There's lots of more interesting things that are happening there. Like the tune that happens a little before it is slightly modified to happen exactly, or like right after it. Happens modified in the violas right at the same time. So he's adding extra layers and arpeggios of D, the D triad here. That's all D, F sharp, and A in there. And that's what the horns are doing. This is the first and second horns that are in D in the score. So how does he get there? So let's find out. So I'm going to go back to where I started, and we'll see. So, as I said, there is a dominant pedal, and that's what we expect. It would just be the dominant pedal going right there. So there's, in this section here, you'll notice that we do have, in fact, an A pedal. And that's an A major triad arpeggio. This is not in the music that I played, but this is what we would expect, something along those lines. Notice the chromatic stuff going on top of that. But the 4 bars after that, with our A pedal, we're getting an F sharp minor triad arpeggio. So F sharp minor, that's going along with the main gesture is happening a bunch of times. That descending chromatic half step. So notice that is F, E, D, A, which is very logical for D major. We're just adding a chromatic half step below each of the top 3 notes there. But the harmonization is more elaborate than just doing, say, an A major or a D major triads above A. So let me move this out here. So dominant pedal on A, we expect, say, A major and A7, and sometimes there'll be like a D over A chord will happen too. But there's a bunch of other things that tend to happen in those moments. But here we start with F sharp minor over A, and that's what happens in the first bar here. Then in the second bar, there's an A, C sharp, and E. So we do get an A triad here. That's below the melody that does F. This is the F, E sharp, F. I'm sorry, F sharp, E sharp, F sharp. Has this chord. And below the A is, above the A is the E, D sharp, E. And then, so these are notes, these are chords. And then the third bar with the A pedal, which I'm going to have to write down a line. Here there's a B flat major triad. So, well, I can call it this. I can call it a B flat major over A, which is itself a 7th chord, like a B flat major 7. Over A, and that is accompanying the D, C sharp, D. So he's undermining the D majoriness with that B flat triad, a B flat chord there. And then, amazingly enough, with the A on the bottom, it goes to an F major chord over A to go above the A note that was the end here. We have A. And this is F major. So here's what that chord progression sounds like. I'll play the tune on top. So with the A on the bottom. So we have. So here's what that sounds like in the little recording I have here. So, and then there's a big growing ascending of all the tremoloed 8th notes here. So they're playing 16ths up these triads. So notice that we're not really signaling D major at this moment. It's more like B flat major or F sharp minor. There's multiple possibilities here as we're moving our F sharps down to F naturals and so on and so forth. So then we take the gesture of the da da boo. So we're taking so Brahms here is going to take our motive here of the ascending of an ascending third, because we've been doing our arpeggios of going up thirds this whole time in the strings. And the trombones have been going up thirds as well. They started on F sharp, went to A, and then went to B flat, D, D flat, D, F. And so on that F, we start building a motive that's just F to A rhythmically. So it happens changing octaves like a mad person. So we get F, A like this. So that's in 3 octaves here. So the double basses are this. It's like 4 octaves are here. And the strings are up there. And every octave is filled in between. Then everyone drops 2 octaves and does it again. And now we take that 2-bar gesture that is half note, quarter, half note, quarter. So I'll write it this way. So we did 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now the next measure is that where we, instead of dropping 2 octaves, we fill in the other octave by moving quarter notes here. So that would be something like this. So we get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we get ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. So Brahms, this entire movement has been playing with the fact that he's in 3, and you can group things into 2 multiple times to make 6, right? So this is 6 beats, and this is 6 beats, and I can do something twice in 6 beats, and I can do something 3 times in 6 beats. So he's going to do that a bunch. And so then he takes this motive and says, hey, I've got other things. F is not the note I want. I need F sharp for us to be in D major. So he does that exactly the same, but now with F sharp. So here's the F natural A1, and then we'll hear the F sharp A1. And that's what gets him back to a D major sound for the next gesture here. So the woodwinds are holding F sharps and A's, which are the 2 notes we had just in the last couple of measures. And the strings play in 16th notes, the main motive slowed down, that, right? During that other, the F sharp and the D, and the F sharp and the A being held. And the trumpets and horns play the opening motive before we get back to the actual recapitulation, right? We're not all the way there yet, but we get the motive is already coming back early. You can think of it like there's a famous moment in Beethoven's 3rd Symphony where one of the horns plays the main motive for the recapitulation a couple of bars earlier than when the recapitulation starts. So this is like a cousin of that idea. So, and then they do this same rhythmic gesture, the brass do. They do da da pa. It's so that rhythmic gesture we've just heard a bunch of times happens here in the brass. And notice that D, C sharp, D gesture happens again now in the low strings and the 3rd trombone. And the woodwinds continue their chord, and they're moving every 2 beats like we've done the previous 2 times. And so that's all. This is all D major. And you're like, well, what? And then we get a completely different chord. So we're getting our D major chord, but it doesn't sound D major chord and the opening melody beginning, but it's not complete. It's being rhythmically modified. It's being used as a motive for a 4-bar pattern we've already heard. So it means that he's not done. And so the next chord sounds like, here's what the next chord sounds like. So that chord, instead of getting, say, A, we get, so let's look at the notes. So we've got G sharp here. That's a B on alto clef. And we have F sharp and D. And just so you're aware, the G sharp, that's B, and the trombones are also in alto clef, so that's a D and a B. They're all in D here, so those are Ds and F sharps, and the melody here is that emphasizing F sharp, D, B, and so it's B. So this is a G sharp half diminished chord, G sharp, B, D, F. That's really cool. Completely unexpected. But notice that it's got two important things in common here. It's got the D and the F that we heard just before. And then the next chord sounds like this. And so the strings go back to that da da dee da dee da 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 da. That gesture happens here. And so the chord after that one is our good friend, there's G, B, D, and E this time. So that chord rearranged. So let me write this. This is G, not that. Should be able to do, nope, nope, there it is. G half diminished 7, G sharp half diminished 7, and this is an E minor 7 chord over G. That's cool, right? So then, by the way, this is a chord that's in D major. This is our 2, this is a 2-6-5 in our D chord, in our key of D. Then we get to an E on the bottom. And notice the big hit that happens here. So listen to this chord here. So we get back to D there. So with the E underneath, there's G, D, and B flat. So that's the 3 notes of a G minor chord above an E. So it's an E, it's some kind of E7 chord. G, G5, D. So that is our good friend E half diminished 7, which is our borrowed chord from D minor to half diminished 7. And then notice in the second, so on top of that, the clarinet and the flute play a scale mostly going down, so it's G. So if I play the chord, that's all right. So just passing tone F, that's E, and then we get D, and then this C is a passing tone to the B flat, and then there's a new chord here on this bar here as you see the trombones move. And so the E pedal is still going on, but there's A, E, and C sharp. So this is an A major triad over E. So this is that. So this is a 5, 6, 4 if you like. Is there a G? Nope. Okay, so there's A triad over E, and then it goes back to our E half diminished 7 one more time. And that's what happens in the last bar before the arrival. So this is another example of our 2-7. And then we get the recapitulation, and we get our D over A, which is a 164, which then goes to 1 4 bars later. There's a, I should mention that there's also the measure where the F sharp is on the bottom during the gesture. That would make it, that gives us a 1 6 in between. So, bleh. So the so we're getting here is a, all of these chords are a predominant setup to a dominant. This is the things you would expect to happen before a dominant chord. You would arrive on an A chord, right? To some sort of 5 passing between two versions of 2, the regular version of 2, right? Not the one from the borrowed minor. I still have no idea what to do with this G7 chord. G sharp half diminished 7 chord. Sounds really cool. Notice it has B and D in common with the next chord. And it had D and F sharp in common with the D major triad that happened before this. So there was our 1, basically. So I don't know what to call this pattern here. Because in our key of D, G sharp is a, this would be a, yeah. So the best option I've got is to call this a 7 half diminished 7 of 5. Meaning that this would be the diatonic chord in the key of A major. This would be the 7 half diminished 7. So going from making this like a 4 of 5. Sure. So that was, I just played D major. Let me write that out for you, so that makes any sense here. So if I wrote out, say, a D major triad, I'll do a standard four voice part writing here. Let me zoom here. So I've got the notes of a D major chord. We'll do it in 3 so that I can do this. So then what I want to have happen is this. I want to have a 5 chord here. So I haven't decided how I'm going to part write this yet. Okay. So let's see if I can get back to the opening voicing here. I'm going to do a 5/7 there. So yeah, that's leaving out the 5th. Okay. I can do a triad this way. So what I'm going to do is build a half diminished 7 chord of this A major triad. So that would be taking, so the 7 of that is G sharp in the key of A. And then I want a B, D, and an F sharp. So we want to keep the F sharp and the D from the previous chord. That's that. And then that means I need a B in the missing voice here. So this is 1, 5 half diminished 7 of 5 to 5 to 1. Works perfectly well to my ear. So, but what Brahms actually does is something more like inserting. So then he, instead of going directly to the expected chord, he inserts 2, because these 2 chords have multiple notes in common, right? They have 3 notes. The rest of the notes, they have 2 notes in common. So both voices move down. And then we can add the half diminished sound. Let me have this voice leap up. Okay, so the next moment then is the half diminished, is this the E half diminished, so that, sorry, the E, what am I doing? Oh yeah, moving to this, and then this becomes B flat. So since the G switches to E, I'm having the E switch to G. And then that, instead of having the E main triad as an A, he has an A major triad. And then we go back to, instead of going to 1 here, he does something like, yeah, and what I should do is, I want the D up there, so then I want, yeah, the A goes to B flat, and then there's that third leap, yeah. So this is what, he does something like this chord progression. So this is a D major chord, then this is a G sharp half diminished 7, which goes to a G minor 7. It's an E minor 7 with G on the bottom, then E half diminished 7, an A triad with an E on the bottom, and then an E half diminished 7th chord that leads back to the tonic, and the tonic here happens in second inversion. So it's like a big setup to a cadential 6/4 chord is what it really is, but it's not a cadential 6/4. It's just the chord that happens at the very, like at the very beginning. So yeah, something like that. So his is better, of course, than my little reduction of it here, my little sort of distilling down, but it's a way to explain how Brahms he kind of fills in between this G sharp half diminished 7th chord and it's the chord that it would go to, this E chord, by filling it in with two other versions of chords that would go to 5, right? So they would go to A. So it's 3 chords in a row that would go to A. And what he's doing is he's making things descend. The G sharp goes to G, the F sharp goes to E, the B goes to B flat. And so since all the voices are descending, that's really the main logic there. So let's take a listen to all of this. So listen for the dominant pedal section where he undermines the harmony of the dominant pedal by harmonizing it with even chords from B flat major. Then we just have F natural and A, which are part of the F major chord. And then he slips it to F sharp A, which are the notes he actually needs for D major. Then we do a D major chord, and then this long predominant setup to an inverted D major chord. That's really the goal of this long predominant section, because this is not a root position chord, so he's going to set it up like it was a cadential 6/4 chord with all the predominant harmonies. Let's call it, because it's like a plagal setup or something. Who knows? Anyway, take a listen to all of this. Let's go back. Okay. Oh, look. Isn't that nice? It did that to me. Okay, from here. And we'll go back up to this. So we're right in this measure right here. I'll zoom in slightly and I can move the score. Lovely. So there's Brahms' very interesting setup to getting back to D major for the beginning of the recapitulation in the first movement of his second symphony. Now I'm going to take a couple of minutes and I'm going to come back. We're going to look at more of Beethoven 1 in my bar-by-bar analysis of the piece, and we're still just in the second theme in episode 15. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hello again. So in hour 2 today, we're looking now at the next section of the second theme. So yesterday I wrote some music that sounded like the second theme up to this point, just to apply some of the things I've learned so far about this movement. And now we get to what's probably the most interesting part of this symphony in my mind, is when it immediately flips from G major into G minor and does some very interesting things while the basses wander around underneath some little woodwind tunelet things. So I'm going to play the score from about right here, this measure, so the last couple bars. So what we'll hear is some counterpoint that moves into G major cadence, immediately flips to G minor, and we'll hear through the end of this section. There's stuff after this in the exposition, but we'll hear from there. So from this stage right here. Here we go. That's as far as I got typing it out. So I wasn't going to get anywhere farther than that today in terms of analyzing this and typing it out. But I'll make sure that for next time I can't make that promise. Maybe I'll have typed this out into my full score sound before tomorrow. It'll happen in the next few days. All right. So what in the world happens here? So actually I'm doing this the wrong way, so let's scroll way back. Okay, those are all my composed elements here. All right, so this right there is, how did I end up on this page? Oh my. Okay, that's the next page, that's why. Okay, here we go. That's this right here. This little measure. So let me add some measures. Add multiple or regular. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Let's add 30 or so. All right. So now, typing out, putting this into a reduction and talking about it as I do so. Here we go. So the basses play the rhythm that we heard in the previous section of the second theme, which is this. This gesture here. Ba ba da da dee. Sounds like this. So that gesture is the basis for this second chunk here, the second theme area. Notice the word theme when you're talking about sonata form doesn't necessarily mean a melody. It means kind of like a chunk of the piece. So anyway, so this melodic melody is based on just stringing together that ba ba da 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 a bunch of times with different pitches. So they start on G, then they go down to F, E flat, D, and C. And that's the long note, and then we get B flat, A, G, F. Let me write this up in the cello octave so we can see it. So remember that this is the cellos and the basses, so it's written the same, but it sounds in octaves. So I'll add an octave to this later down. So F, E flat, D, C, and then B flat, A, G, F, and then G, A flat, A natural, B flat. Notice here that we're going around the circle of fifths. Right, we're going around fourths, so we go from C, big long G, to big long C, to big long F, to big long B flat. Those are all, we're going up perfect fourths. Or we're going down fifths. And so the notes in between change depending on what actual notes are available in this range of the cello or a bass. So we go down twice to F. But the B flat below that isn't available, so Beethoven goes up. And so he fills it in with this gesture here, which if you'll remember from the previous section, is the version of the same motive we've seen before. So it's this A flat, so let me write this out. So we've seen this before, the A flat, B, C, C sharp, to D, and then a version of that cropped up amidst, it's over here, amidst the couple bars later was the version a step higher. So a whole step higher than A is G, a whole step higher than that is B is A, and then so on, B flat, sorry, it's whole step lower, So whole step lower, So A down to G, B down to A, C down to B flat, C sharp down to B, D down to C. It's the same sound. That's from a very famous 70s song. That little gesture in the bass, down here, something like this. I can't remember what that is. I know what the sound is. I can't remember the name of it. So I can't look it up because that's all I remember is that little thing. So anyway, but that's this gesture here that we've just seen starting on F. So if I took that F, go up a whole step to G, go up a half step to A flat, do A natural, and then B flat. So the same, this pitch thing, we've seen that before. So Beethoven is throwing various and sundry things together here. So after the B flat, we do a version that's very similar to that. In the next bar, we go up to C, C sharp, D, E flat. So we're continuing our cycle down the circle of fifths. And guess what? This follows the same pattern yet again. So we have B flat. So we had B flat. We go up a whole step to C. Go up a half step to C sharp. Go up a half step to D. Go a half step to E flat. Notice here that he decides to write it as two kinds of C rather than two kinds of D. I'm not exactly sure why that is. But so he's notating it slightly differently in terms of which note gets to, which letter name gets two versions. Either one's really possible depending on the context. Right, and then the chromatic gesture that we've been seeing gets modified as we go to ba-da-da-dee-da-da-da-dee-da-da-da. So this rhythm, we're doing all eighth notes. So we're going from, we do E flat and a note below it. We do E flat with the lower neighbor. And then we do F with the lower neighbor. But he wants to fill in the gap between them. And since we've been leading up the stuff with two half steps in a row, he does the same thing here, which sets up actually three half steps in a row. Right, so from the D to the F are three half steps in a row. That's cool. From there, we get to the new page, and then we go back to our half note rhythm land. And so why does Beethoven repeat two Fs in that previous bar? He doesn't do an F sharp here. Why is this not an F sharp? Yeah, let me write it this way. Why not F sharp? And the reason is because the next bar starts on F sharp. And so the half step below F sharp is F natural. So F natural gets repeated rather than going up a half step. All right. So then now we get a new melodic contour. We go F sharp, F sharp, F sharp, D, E, F sharp, G. Because we're not going around the circle of fifths anymore, at least not for now. We have C. And then, so G, G, A, B flat, C. And then C, B, C, C. And then C sharp, B sharp, C sharp. There's a B sharp in the wild for you. Then we have D, which holds on, and then we goes C sharp, D, D sharp, E. Ugh, I'm not typing this out very well at the moment. Okay. The E holds, and then we go D, C, B, C, B, C, C sharp. Oof. Oh, I typed a D, that's why. C sharp, D, C sharp, D. Drop the octave. And then we get our back, and then we're back to our main motive, but now in G. Bum ba dum. That was the motive that opened the That's the motive that opened our exposition. Bum bum ba-dum. And so it's yeah, but now we're in G, so we're doing. There we go. So he wanders back round to G, and just if you're wondering, we do wander around back to G major. This is the clarinets, and that's a B in the first clarinet because they're written in C in this symphony. So we're back to G major. So where is all this wilderness that he explores in the meantime? So notice that he has to make a bunch of modifications to the opening set of gestures as we go forward. So this pattern of the E, that comes back over here, but it happens differently this time because we're going, instead of from E flat to F sharp, we're going from C to C sharp to D. So since everything's half steps, we get the gesture that's like this F, E, F, F gesture. So if I wrote that out, it's we get C, C, B, C, C, and then C sharp, B sharp, C sharp, C sharp to D. So let's put the F sharp there. So the pattern is this thing. Let's do it that way. So notice that instead of getting this extra half step here, we're just getting this repeated gesture here a bunch of times. So it's this, C, B, C, C. We do all that up a half step, and then we go up a half step like this other time. Like this other time up here, F to F sharp, C sharp to D. Again, not the same notated pitch. But we're aiming to get to, this little section here is aiming to get to D, which is our dominant in G. So all of this stuff that's happening in between is, so this is signaling a 5-chord too, this F sharp to D, E, F sharp, and then this G is our tonic. And so what he wants to get into the tonic, he just wants to do a standard sol, la, ti, do, 5, 6, 7, 1. Sol, la, ti, do, and then because we're still in G minor-y land, he wants to then emphasize the 4th scale degree, like he did the first time, right? We went from C to F, G to C, and D is our friend on the other side of this circle of fifths. So from D to G to C. So we repeat the G, A, B flat, C. So that's happening in the key of G minor. So that's 1, 2, flat 3, 4. And then we do 4 sharp, 4, 5. And then we go up to, we want to go up to 6 to help set up our cadence. So he does that by filling in 3 chromatic half steps like we've seen a bunch of times before. So C sharp, D, D sharp, E. So C sharp, D, 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 C sharp, D, D sharp, E. And then we want to emphasize the C that we're kind of getting to, right? So 6, 4. That's the 6th and the 4th scale degree. So we just step down to the to the one note below that. And then we're going to do another set of 3 half steps to the 5th scale degree again. Notice instead of doing, we're going to follow this pattern, which is this pattern. So B, C, C sharp, B, C sharp, C, C sharp, D. And then that's a very standard cadential gesture of doing an octave leap to do, and before that a lower half, down a half step. Bum, ba, da, da, bum, bum. Because he's been doing that da 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 all in this as well. So it all fits together really nicely, and it takes different paths to get to very specific places he's aiming to get to. So just listen to this tune all the way through. Okay, cool. So now all of this happens in addition an octave lower, because the cellos and the basses are playing it together. And so now we're going to see, what does Beethoven do while this is all happening? So the first bassoon up here plays the first few notes of this with the cellos, and the upper strings start playing. So they're doing separated bow on the same bow quarter notes. So they're doing bum, bum, bum. So they're same bow, same direction. They stop and start again. That's what the slurred staccato means. So we get, the notes we get here are G, B, and D for this first measure. So G, B flat, and D. So it becomes G minor directly on the second quarter note back here. All right. Then the next measure, we get G, C, and E flat, and that repeats, I'm sorry, yeah, E flat and C, and they repeat that the whole bar. So that makes that entire measure our minor 4. So it's following the pattern so far. Excuse me. So we had our G major that becomes G minor, and then we get our good friend C minor, right? And then in the next bar, they move to A, C, and E flat, and then that A in the viola, this note here, becomes the F natural. So we get our F natural, which is not in, so we're definitely not in G major anymore with F naturals. And so the C and the E flat stick around. So that means here we're having our good friend, that's not what I wanted. We have our good friend F7, which is a diatonic chord in G minor. All right, so that's we're going around our circle of fifths very logically here. While this measure happens, the first oboe begins playing an F long note that they will hold through the next bar. And then when we keep going, the next chord, we have, so that's this measure. The F stays in the violas, the seconds move to B flat, and the first move to D. So we get our good friend B flat major here. So let me, I'm just going to write it this way for right now. Actually, let me put in front of that the big flat just so that we know it's the lowered. So I'm using the flat to mean the lowered 7th scale degree, F natural in this instance, and not to mean that we're going to take this note and make it a flat. That's what I'm using that flat that way for. Okay, and then the chord after that is our good friend 3. And that's just a regular circle of fifths, 1 to 4 to 7 to 3, and so on. Notice that this 7 here is a 5/7 of B flat. So we're really getting an emphasis on the B flat chord when it shows up. The oboe, after playing its F for a dotted half note, plays 8th notes E flat and D. So the D is a passing tone. The E flat is a passing tone. And then we get G in the viola twice. Above that, 2 E flats, B flats, excuse me, in the second violin, and then 2 C's in the first. Notice here the harmonic rhythm changes to 2 beats instead of 4. So here what happens at the beginning of this bar is C, E flat, G, and B flat, and the D is a lower neighbor. So that means that this is we've gone back to our C minor chord, but as a C minor 7 over E flat. I'm gonna make this smaller because it's too big. Well, let's do it this way. Yeah, do that. I need more room. This is the problem. Let's just do this. No, I need all of that on the screen. Okay, let me just do that for now. Okay, this is too big in the end. So what would it look like with 15? 15 will do the job for now. Right. Then, second half of the bar, the first violin is still playing C, but the second moves down to A, and the viola plays F, and then A. And so that's our good friend F major. So notice there, we've gone back to C minor 7 is our minor 4. This is a minor 4, 6, 5. And if you like analyzing chromatic pitches that happen here like this E to F as some kind of as some sort of secondary function, like a note that mimics T, this would be a C dominant 7th chord for a moment going to F. So we really emphasize the F major chord here. So, and that's our flat 7 chord again. Yeah, that one. But so this is a couple of chords in the key of F. Like this is 4, slips through 5. Right, so there's some sort of F majoriness to this. Not completely because the C minor chord. So it's kind of slides into F. But it's not going to stay there because the F sharp in the next bar. Okay, the oboe in this measure of the C minor 7 and the F triad plays quarter note C 4 times, but it plays an exaciatura, I believe that's the term. So it plays a grace note that does not have a slash on it. Yeah, that's a 16th note. And so, if you're really into grace notes and how they're supposed to be played, this really shouldn't be a beat-a-dum bum bum where you would play the D before the beat. This is the one where you would play it on the beat. So it becomes be-da-da-dee-da-dum versus dee-dee-da-dum bum bum. So that's kind of adding to the reason it's written that way is that the D isn't a chord tone with this C7 chord, but the C is. It's a way to notate that the C is the resolution. So it's the more important of the two notes. So it means that you're going to play the D louder. That's funny. It's sort of backwards, but that's the way it works. Like, I'm not going to psychoanalyze the reasons they made grace notes certain ways all those years ago. So we keep going, and we get with our F sharp, we have A, and C on the first downbeat there, with our lovely, the way the photocopier made it kind of chunky looking. So they have A and C against the F sharp, and then they move up to D, A, and C. While the oboe and the bassoon come in on this measure on D as whole notes, tied to dotted quarters. So there are D's, and our D, F sharp, A7, A and C, excuse me. Our D, F sharp, A, C chord, which is a D7 chord. And so this is our good friend 5, 7. It's actually 5, 6, 5 because the F sharp is on the bottom for a moment. So we'll call it over F sharp. may change the size of this again. Let's make it 15. Okay, notice it does leap down to D, but back up to F sharp here, so it's still really fulfilling the role as a 5-6-5 chord rather than a 5-7. So those three notes continue. In the next bar, we go to G, and in the strings, we get D, 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 and then G. In the viola, we get 3 Gs, and then a D in the first violin, the second violin, so they swap places in the voice leading, and then there's a B flat above all of that. So we get our good friend G minor, so that's 1, minor 1. So we've wandered our way back to G minor after all of this wandering, so take a listen to this up to here. So we're back to G minor here. So notice how we got here. So we went away from our key by going 1 to 4 to 7 to 3, and 3 is the farthest away we've gone. And then we go up to C minor. So we go from 3 to 4 to set up a cadence, but rather than setting up 4 to 5 directly, he fills in the 4 to 5 with a move to 7 and then go to 5. So I'm going to talk about what's going on here a little bit more later. But so it's a big long thing. And so the oboe and the bassoon come back in on the dominant chord. And so we keep going. So then we go back to 2 chords per bar here. Oh, I should put in the C and B flat in the oboe here. So the C here is a passing tone. Then we get, I'll just put in the A's. I'm gonna just go grab this over here, and they do this on A. And this is a B flat grace note. And then that can happen up here. So with those A's, the strings play, so the viola has 4 G's in this bar. The second violin has 2 E flats and then 2 E naturals. And then there's 4 A's in the first violin. So this moment, so we go from having, so I'm going to need my good friend the smaller one. So here, this is an A half diminished 7, A, C, E flat, G. So, oh yes, yes. Okay, so that's, nope. Should be able to, oh no, okay, that's why. Okay, A half diminished 7 over C. And then the next chord is C sharp, A, C sharp, B, and G. So this isn't just a regular A7, dominant 7th chord over C sharp. And guess what? So this means that we have our good friend 2 half diminished 6-5, then followed by, this is 5-6-5 of 5. So a secondary dominant preceded by its diatonic version. And so you need to move 2 notes, the C sharp and the E natural, to make that chord work. Okay, and that all happens with A's. Okay, and then the next bar, when the D returns, which is the root of our 5 chord, we get F sharp in the viola, followed by 3 A's. The second violin also plays F sharp and then goes up to C. And then the first violin starts on A and then leaps up to F sharp. So we'll get a revoicing of this chord after the second beat. Okay, while this happens, the woodwinds all start playing whole notes. And then the bassoons have this C and that F sharp. The clarinets again are in C, so they have this A and that C. And then that's second oboe C as well as the clarinet C. And we have F sharp in the first oboe, which is also the note in the second flute, and a C in the first flute. So this is a D dominant seventh chord, F sharp, D, F sharp, A, C. So this is our good friend 5-7. So our 5 of 5 did in fact lead us to 5. Okay, then the next bar here, we have E's in the bass, and we get G in the viola. The second violins have B, and the first have G. Then in the woodwinds, this is the bassoon notes, a G and a B and a G, and that G ties to the next bar, which is also the. I'm going to rewrite this. So that it, I'm going to rewrite all of this so that it's all in treble clef, because it'll just be easier to see everything. Because the first bassoon isn't going to go very low until that next bar. So this is all going to go into our treble clef here. So B and G, B and G. So the second clarinet has that G, first clarinet has that B, second oboe has that B, then we have a G up here for first oboe, which is doubled in the second flute, and we have a B there. So this is our, guess what? This is a E, so it looks like G major chord, but there's an E on the bottom here. So that means that we're dealing with our good friend E minor 7. So that is a 2-7 chord. So that's wrong. Excuse me. E minor is 6-7. So let me fix that. Wrong key. So 6-7. Actually, I'm imagining a note. It's only E minor. It's only E, G, and B. That makes more sense. I was thinking like, how was it a 6? So E, G, and B in this measure, right? So E, G, B, G, B, G, B, G, B. Okay, so we get a deceptive resolution of our 5-7. And then the basses step down, and then we get another chord in the next bar. So another 2 chords per bar. So with the C in the bass, we get an E that leaps up to A in the viola. Then we have an A and an E in the seconds, and then there's a G in the firsts. Then in the second half of the bar, they do A, C, and F sharp twice. Okay, then we get half notes here. I'm just going to write everything as half notes with some ties. So we get an E and a C in the second bassoon, the tied G in the first bassoon going down to F sharp. That's the same as the second clarinet. The first clarinet does this E, C up an octave. Then we get a whole note A in the second oboe, which I'm going to write as 2 half notes tied together. Then a G, F sharp in the first oboe. For some reason, the oboist repeats the G rather than tying it. The second flute does a tie. That might be a missing tie in the oboe. I don't know. And then that A held out is in the flute on top. So the first half of this bar is C, A, G, and E. So A, C, E, G. So this is our 2. Happens to be 2-6-5. And then, so this is A minor 7 over C. Let me grab this and rename it here. Then the second half of the bar is D, F sharp, A, and C. So this is our good old friend D7. What Why are you clipped to the top line? Whatever. Okay. And so that gives us another 5, 7, and we want the resolution here. So we have G and G. In the violins, the violas leap down a whole lot from there to there, A down to that G, to double the cellos. That's the same as the cello line. And then the bassoons play this G and the G an octave higher than that. And the oboes play these two Gs and the flutes play the tupper G. And then in addition to that, the clarinets play quarter notes B and G. And that gives us an incomplete G major triad. So G major. So we're back in G. Notice that so from this G major chord, everything here works. It's very straightforward in terms of its harmony. So we have G minor 1, and then in G minor we have our 2, 6, 5, 2 half diminished 6, 5. Then we do a secondary dominant of 5, which is exactly how you would fill this in. Between 2 and 5 you could add a secondary dominant. And then you go to 5, and instead of going to 1 you can go to 6, and then 6 will allow you to go to 2, 6, 5, and then 5 with an octave leap to 1. And now we have G major. Notice that it's already in G major by the time you get to this E minor chord. Because if it was still in G minor, this would be an E flat major triad. So we're going to listen from here. So I'm going to do something kind of bonkers here. I'm going to copy everything from this, and I'm going to rewrite this so that it stays in G minor, just to show you how that would work. So if we were going to do if we were going to do E flat major here, that means that we would have, and again, I'm just going to put the flat for my own edification. It's a sharp, not a flat. That one right there. Okay, so the diatonic D would mean I would want E flat here, and that means I would have to do a repeated D here to go into this, and then this would become B flat, and then that would become that, and then this would have to be, I could have B natural there. So here's how this would sound. So yeah. And then here I would need E flats. Yeah, that all works. That's fine. Yeah, what would it sound like with B flats here? Yeah, that's fine. I'll leave the B flat there for that purpose, just to make it sound like E flat, still in G minor. Then here, that all works, and then I just need a B flat there. So this is what it would sound like if it stayed in G minor. Yeah, I mean, so that I don't think that's as good, because we're in a C major symphony and we're trying to get back to G. We want to get back to G major and do stuff in G major, and so the momentary turn to G minor is nice, but he needs to get back before he returns, because then you're just going to be doing a lot of bum bum, but you're going to be doing a lot of minor key things later. So it's also, you don't get to do this very nice. The D sharp here up to E, that's a good mimicking of what was happening before. So, all right, I'll just, this is all stuff to throw. Well, I'm not going to throw it away. But this is what this would be. So that would make this into the half diminished thing, and then we could it's not that. I'm trying to, yeah, there it is. Yeah, okay, and then this would be minor 1. Okay, so just listen to this as it's actually written from here. Okay. So what did I want to mention? I've got 15 more minutes today. So so if I wanted to get more detailed with my harmonic analysis here, the Roman numerals, I could change the inversion of the chord depending on which one goes into the next chord. Like, because the bass here goes down to D, and the D is the one that flips into the 4. So this becomes a G minor over D at the end before it goes to the 4 chords. Same here with the G on the bottom. And then the A, becomes a first inversion chord, and the same here, first inversion. And so notice that matches the first inversion thing that happens later. We could also specifically, as I mentioned, have that C7 over C7 chord, the 5 of the flat 7. I could put that in here. And then I could show that this moved down to regular D before it goes back. D7 goes back to the D7 in root position before it goes back to first inversion, and then this moved to first inversion here for the G minor chord and similar kinds of things, and then this moved down to the 6/4 here. Stuff like that. I could be more precise if I wanted to be. So just notice that want to point out some things about the voice leading here. So the strings are doing lots of logical voice leading in the accompaniment to the tune, right? So they start on this G minor chord here, and then they for G major chord, and then they revoice. So everybody leaps down from their notes, so that they have a fully voiced G minor chord as the bass is moving around. And then we just have the 2 voices, upper voices are going to move up a step for the next chord. And then he does a very logical thing because he wants to imply an entire F7 chord. But he knows that he's not going to have all the notes available at first because he wants to have this go from F to A to B flat. And if you do that with the dominant 7th chord, you don't want to double that A natural. So since it starts with an F in the bass, they keep the upper 2 voices of C and D flat from the C minor chord. And the viola moves up to the A, and then on the next beat moves down to the F, so that we do hear so that he doesn't cross the streams, as it were, of which note is going to resolve to the B flat, which voice will have the A. So since that's going to happen in the bass line, the viola needs to revoice. But he wants to make sure that you get the full sonority at the beginning, because otherwise you wouldn't get an A until the very end of the bar. So that's a very logical way of doing. So one of the things that's very doesn't really get taught very quickly, very early, or very much in sort of music theory classes is this kind of moving the voices around when you need specific when the melody changes its pitches and you want to resolve to another chord, how you handle what voices go to what note, that kind of thing. That doesn't really get explored a lot. So Beethoven does a lot of good examples in this section of doing that. And so then in our new voicing of the F, C, E flat, the upper 2 voices move down to the B flat by step while the F stays on the bottom. Then in the next measure, we keep the B flat in the middle, and the outer two voices move in. So F goes to G and D goes to C to leave room for the E flat, the third of the chord on the bottom. And then we resolve to an F in root position. And notice at that moment the F and the F in the viola and the second in the cello bass are that's the cello and the viola playing the same note. So again, the viola moves up to double the A here to get out of the way of the cello line. So we have a doubled A here in the second half of the bar. So there are two A's and a C. And then all of those notes stick around because the F in the next bar just becomes F sharp. And then they revoice. Everybody goes up. So he wants a new voicing, and what he wants is an A and two C's. So he gets a better voicing of this chord because we're going to have the D on the bottom here. I'm sorry, there aren't two C's. This is the D, the A, and the C. So he doesn't really worry about there being a D here in the very beginning of this measure in the strings because that's when the D shows up. I gotta scroll down. Okay, there it is. So when the D shows up in the oboe and the bassoons, he doesn't need it here. So it doesn't happen. He doesn't need it on the downbeat, but he will need it for when they're playing the revoiced chord. So the D happens here, A happens here. So they go up higher, and the reason they leap up so much here is because the cellos and basses are going to move up into that register that if they just kept doing smooth voice leading here, they would have been crossing over more with the violas. So that's why everybody leaps up to create some more room for the cello line to go higher. And so then we have the D, A, and C because the cello line has the third of the chord. And then we keep the D and everybody moves down otherwise. The upper voices move down by step. And notice again we revoice at the end of this bar because the cello we're still even too close with the D here because of how far they've moved up. So the viola has to leap up to G, and for some reason it doesn't bother him. So he decides to have the viola leap up to D and the second violin take on this line here. I'm not sure why he does that. I don't know why that would matter. Is that going to cause some voice leading problems? No, because that would be here. I have questions about why he did this. It's not a big deal, but I don't know why the seconds go down. It might have something to do with this. But anyway. So they swap parts, they swap places, the violas and the cello, violas and the second violins. And then they're doing something similar to what we've seen before, is that we keep one note and the other two voices move in contrary motion so that to leaving the third of the chord available for the cellos and basses to play. And then the chromatic sliding up that happens in one voice alongside it, that's way over here. So we're in this section right here. And then both the E and the G resolve to F sharp. It's interesting. Why doesn't the E go down to D? That would have been the more normative resolution there. The G has to go down, but why doesn't he have the... I guess the reason he has the doubled F sharp is because having the E go down to D would have made a bigger leap here. The D to C7 leap, because this is an octave leap, this is an octave leap, this is a fourth leap, so that's not really that odd. But there is a tritone leap there. Would have made a seventh leap, and that's harder to hear. So that's probably why. If he wants the C here, it means that this voice is a better option. But it wouldn't have made a difference because they're both on F here. I don't know. Okay. So the first move up to F sharp, and so we do another leaping up texture. Here it's less about needing, well, it is, I mean, you would have doubled this D, and since they're going to go up to the E, you need to you need everybody shift up again. And so again, we don't need the, since the woodwinds come here with C's, he doesn't need the C on the downbeat, the C natural. And so he can fill it in when they all leap up. And so we have all the three notes of the top notes of a D7 chord. And then that resolves, we get a standard resolution for a 5 to 6 chord. So the F sharp goes to G, the C goes to B as required. And then the other voice goes from A down to G. So we have a doubled third in the strings here of an E minor triad. Notice that the same thing happens up in the woodwinds. All the C's go to B, the F sharps go to G, and the A goes to G. Well, where does the A go? Let's double check. The A goes to G. Yeah, the 1A here goes to G. Yeah, so it's the same voice leading. Then we get a revoicing in the A minor triad. So here, the reason this happens is because we want to keep the G, which is the 7th of the chord, on top. And we want the B to go down to A. So the other G here that's doubled, that can go anywhere, that can go to somewhere nice, and so that would be the E. And so we've got a voicing down there. And now we want to have a less distance between the seconds and firsts. So that means leaping up, having the viola and second violin exchange notes as they both go up. So E to A and A to E. Then the G resolves down to F sharp, which is now the 7th scale degree, which needs to go back up to G. And so that, interestingly enough, that doesn't prepare this C very well, but apparently Beethoven doesn't care about that. E, C, B. It's an inner voice. Yeah, okay, interesting. That's like the last option available. It's descending by leap into a 7th is the least likely option. So Beethoven does it. Cool. Okay, and then the G holds over, resolves F sharp, and then the A holds through as the bass moves. And the A goes down to G. And interestingly enough, the C's here, that just disappears in the viola, but it is in the same octave as the clarinet. I'm sorry, it's not there. It's this second violin does not play a B here. It just goes to the G to start the melody again. So then, but the clarinet, the 1C here, that resolves that, which gets resolved in the bassoon either, is in the clarinet, that B. So that's the only one that resolves the 7th of the chord. Fascinating. I don't know if you think it's fascinating, but I like it. Apparently Nash thinks this is a good stream, so thank you. I'm grateful for your comment. So here we are. So I've done some intense typing this out and analyzing it. So I wanted to mention one more thing that I mentioned something that I was going to talk about. So I was going to explain something about this passage here. So going from the C minor 7 over E flat to the F triad to the D7 over F sharp to the G minor chord. So I'm gonna include the B flat chord in this look here. So when I look at this set of Roman numerals in a row, my brain kind of just goes, I don't know what this means. And so I want to talk about this a little bit. So I don't have any problems. So the last two chords, that makes perfect sense. There's no big deal there. And the B flat going to C minor, that's perfectly fine too. I'm good with this stuff. The thing that kind of gets me, and so the thing that kind of gets me is this C minor 7 to F chord, but the way that Beethoven kind of gets around my little confusion, or just not thinking about it hard enough, is that he inserts that one E natural here. And so that creates a momentary 5-6-5 of F. And so I'm just going to write it this way. I'm going to put of, since the next thing is what we need. Right, so that successfully connects this, you know, because B flat going to C minor 7, that happens in lots of places. So like in B flat major, this would be 1 going to 2, 6, 5. Sure, why not? In the key of E flat, this would be 5 going to like a 6 with some extra crap in it. I mean, that's so what we're doing is we're taking a major triad and we're going up a whole step and doing a minor 7th chord. And so that can happen on 1, it can happen on 3 in a minor key, it can happen on 5 going to 6. So this is a standard progression. Doesn't happen a lot, but it happens often enough that this is not anything strange. And then the stuff in the middle here, so this 5 of F, sure, that's nothing weird. Why not? And that chord links here to this very easily as this could be a 5-6-5 of 5 going to 5 in B flat major. Yeah, I'm not going to do it in E flat and so in the key of F, this would be like a 4 going to 5-6-5 going to 5. I'm sorry, going to 1. So that would be an F. And so then this chord would be an odd instance of something like that. And so that's a little less satisfactory in my mind, but I'm not bothered by this so much, right? Because we're having this ascent of B flat to C to F. And so this pattern is very logical in my mind. And so then the thing I have to explain, let me do it this way again. Let me just copy paste because I'm keeping the stuff I'm writing here. So the thing I have to explain in my mind, why did I put a 5 there? That's weird. Okay, there you go. Is this pattern of F to D7. Which again, in a minor key, this isn't that strange. If you're going back to, if you go back to like, is it like La Folia or something? So when you go into old Renaissance ground basses that you would like improvise stuff off of, which is a standard old practice going back a long, long time. There are a lot of minor key ground basses where you flip to the relative major, so in the key of G minor, you know, the chords that you would use a lot of in these kind of instances is you would use G minor and D7, and then you would use the two chords for the relative major, which are B flat and F as a triad, or you could use F7 if you liked, right? So you would use these four harmonies. You would use these four harmonies a lot. So putting F in close conjunction with D7 isn't that weird. It's kind of it doesn't come up a lot in the classes that I would teach. Again, I was mainly taught freshman music theory, so these are kind of finer points of tonal theory that don't get described for freshmen, just because it's really complex. Yeah. So that, but the way that you get this, the way that we can think about this, if I like take my F major chord here. Oh yeah, so this is why I wanted to bring this up. So if I take my F major chord and put it next to an F dominant seventh, D dominant seventh chord, we're going to put the D on top. Notice the very smooth voice leading here. Like the D could come from a C, and we'd have two C's, and those two notes hold together. And then the F moving to F sharp. That gives us a very easy way to go from... I played a B flat major chord first. And another way to think about this is if we're taking if we take an F major chord and add another note to the F major chord, we would get a D minor 7 going to a D fully diminished 7. And that's literally just going, and that happens, I played a G minor chord at the end there. So, and that happens all throughout this. This pattern here is exactly the thing I just described, but going to D. So so we're going from, well, this is half diminished, but it's the basic same concept here of taking a 2 function chord and going to the 5 function chord. Oh, let's say it's like a, well, I should put it this way. This is a secondary dominant. So this is a 5-7 functioning chord. So a 5-7 of something. So there's a 2 function chord going to a 5-7 of chord. Whereas this A7 chord is doing the same pattern, but in a minor key. So the voicing here that would match is then G and and A. So this is the 2 half diminished sound here. I should say. Let me put the 7 here. And then this is the 5-7 of thing. But notice here that so the 2 voices on top that hold 2 notes out, instead of having 3, you only have 2, and this inner voice has to also move up by half step. So meaning that this pattern, which is already existing in Beethoven, this section of Beethoven's music here, a similar pattern in a major key style would do the same thing as this progression right here with an extra note. So it's like this is like this, and this is a more complicated version of this. And so this passage of the F chord to the D7 chord is like that. And so, and then Beethoven gets into it in a similar way by taking which is a version of this harmonization here. So there's another example, which is, so we're taking the C minor 7, which has E flat on the bottom, and then we're going up to G and B flat and C, and then there's B flat. I will need one more over here. And then E. So it's just a very slight movement here, but it's this same pattern here of a 2-7 going to a 5-7 of X going to F. So notice I've written them all in first inversion, but I've only written the 7 because I just didn't want to take the time of writing 6-5. So I'll be nitpicky about this. So it's literally right before it, and then he does a very similar progression from the F major triad to the D7 chord to something like that. So that's how my brain can explain the logic of the voice leading of having an F major triad go to a D dominant seventh chord. So there's something similar about an F major triad and a D minor 7 in tonal music. And that's just that's like 4 and 2 7, which those happen all the time. So there are a lot of different places where you can exchange these things, and he happens to be doing it here with the flat 7 going to 5. So that move of the F down to D is like a 4 going to 2, but we're dealing with different qualities. So there you go, something like that. All right, so when I come back tomorrow for episode 16 in the Beethoven here, I'm going to then work on this section. Well, do I want to write something like this? Yeah, I guess I could do that. Let me think about that. I'll decide what I'll do tomorrow. So we'll either be writing some music like this G minor section here, or typing out the next chunk, and then we'll come back and write something that's in a couple of days after that. But anyway, we're going to keep going in the G section of the exposition after this. So, thanks for watching. I'm David Kolma. This has been Symphonizing episode 15 of Music Corner. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.